One of my greatest memories is the first time I flew a single-seat aircraft, flying a 20-ton fighter jet with just you in it. That's the dream. That's everything you ever wanted to do. That's the Spitfire, the Hurricane, the P-51, the P-38, the you and the machine, the man-machine interface in an aircraft that can accelerate while pointing straight up at the sky. The real feeling of that is like watching the pod racing in Star Wars. Just like you get pushed back in the seat, the jet accelerates away, you know you're raining thunder and noise down on the villages below you. And then you come back and land the aircraft and it's all over and you're like, I just took off an F-18 Hornet, flew it around all by myself and got it back on the ground, no one got hurt. And I did it, I just achieved my life dream right there. Wow. That's a small moment. Most of the time it's bloody hard.
Welcome to the Seven Hats Podcast. My name is Yuval Selik. And I've been on the entrepreneurial roller coaster for over 20 years. I've experienced it all throughout my journey: the grind, burnout, failure, and ultimately, success. The turning point for me was realizing that building a successful company is meaningless if you neglect the other significant areas of your life. So today, I'm inviting you to join me on an adventure through those 7 areas, what I call the 7 hats. Every week, my guests and I will drop valuable insights and pearls of wisdom, helping, motivating, and inspiring you to get your 7 hats in order and deliver real impact with meaning. So let's get going. Welcome, 7 Hatters. In this episode, we speak with Christian Boucousis, better known as Boo, and dive deep into hat numbers 1 and 4, the soul and the entrepreneur, as we jump in a fighter jet, strap on, and claim air superiority as entrepreneurs. Selected for pilot training in the Royal Australian Air Force at the age of 18, Boo was one of only 400 to graduate as a fighter pilot in a period of 40 years. If fighter pilot was insufficient to add to his resume, Boo successfully ran 4 companies and now travels the world as a professional speaker. Realizing he can take the insights and ahas from the $15 million training program Boo participated in as a fighter pilot, he is now equipping entrepreneurs with the skills to achieve business success, the fighter pilot way. You think a roller coaster is scary? Try to barrel roll your way on the entrepreneurial journey. Talk about the ups and downs in the 4th dimension. So let's do as Buddha said, if you want to fly, give up everything that weighs you down, and let's welcome Boo to the 7 hats. Christian, or Boo, as you like to be called, welcome to the 7 hats.
Thanks for having me, mate. I'm very excited. I'm loving what you do. I like the concept of the 7 hats, and I'm all about bringing simplicity to complex environments. And obviously, as an entrepreneur, it's one of the most complex things you can do. So I'm all in. I'm bought into our conversation today, mate.
That makes me so happy. I'm really happy to be able to introduce you to my audience. A group of ambitious entrepreneurs. We call them the 7 Hatters. We bring on this show people who have wisdom where we can benefit from. And boy, do you fit that description. 2 weeks ago, I had an ex-US Navy SEAL on the show, William Brennan. What I noticed was the mental sharpness and toughness developed in their training was extraordinarily useful in the world of the entrepreneur. And from my research, this appears to be the rule, not the exception. So you're a person who has been able to develop amazing skills, overcome huge challenges, and even experience a bit of luck along the path to tremendous success. And we're going to touch upon all of those things today, but we'd also like to know a little bit about who Boo is. So let's start at the beginning. Where were you born and how was your childhood?
Yeah, look, I had your standard middle-class upbringing, really. Nothing too exciting or too dramatic. We had a fairly adventurous life. We were into boating and not luxury yachts, obviously, but small boats that you could spend the night on. We spent a lot of time building great relationships within that boaty community. And then, just fairly standard, went through a normal school, wasn't particularly academic. I think one of the unique things about my primary school, though, which is, I guess, elementary in the US, I had a teacher for a few years who focused on lateral thinking as opposed to reading, writing, arithmetic. And every week we'd be given this lateral thinking exercise that we had to kind of work our way through. Mrs. King was her name. I think with that, in hindsight, Having a teacher that was more focused on life skills rather than the detail was really useful, because it just got you to understand that learning could be fun, like problem solving, and you had elements of mathematics, English, everything in solving these problems she'd pose every week. But because it was like a whodunit or some investigative piece, you created that problem solving set. And I think one of the major skill sets for me is I think I'm a very good problem solver. Probably too much so when you look at bringing that back into your relationships. So that was probably the only nuance at that age. I love sport. I lived in a town in Australia called Brisbane. It's our third largest city in Australia. When I was there, it was a bit of a rural gateway. So it was a gateway into one of our big states, which would probably be a bit like Texas, just lots of cattle country. And so everyone wore boots and jeans and denim shirts and that sort of lifestyle. So it was quite an outdoorsy environment. That city's changed a lot now. It's quite cosmopolitan. So that was my background. And my mum's side of the family, she had 6 brothers and sisters. I had 25 cousins, and they lived, all through the country. And we spent holidays out flying, in my uncle's helicopter, mustering cattle and doing all those sort of things. I had a pretty adventurous lifestyle as a kid, and I always enjoyed that. I always enjoyed getting out and trying new things. A high school for me, again, very sport orientated academically, not very good at all. I did my last year of high school. I did it again and didn't do much better the second time. And I've always struggled with structured learning. I'm not very good at memorization, behavioral style learning environments. But I loved reading. I've read thousands of books when I was a kid and a teenager. I was always fascinated by empires and cultures and civilizations. So, reading every cycle of from the Romans, Mesopotamians, Persians, through to the Ottoman empires, Alexander the Great, the Roman empires. I've always fascinated by this cycle of civilizations and empire. And I really enjoyed reading about the leaders. What was the nuance of the leaders? And I wasn't very good. I never really read the books that were, I guess, historically. They were always like a novel on the time. So there was a storytelling component to it as well. But I always found it interesting because when you'd read a novel, you go, well, did that really happen? And that would motivate me to go and read history books and deconstruct it a little bit. So I spent a lot of time on that. I loved aviation, so therefore I read everything I could consume in aviation. I always wanted to be a fighter pilot. One of the big moments around the age of 6, I went to an air show, and it was the first time I really saw these fighter jets, the noise, the speed, the jet fuel. And I think I had a visceral experience there where it was all so overwhelming and so cool. Talking to the pilots, the color, everything about it was just like, this is cool. And I think it highlighted to me in life how important attaching experiences are to learning. Where learning out of a book, you'll never smell jet fuel when you read about the iteration of fighter jets, right? So that imprinted to me and drove all of my behaviours and activity. And I think one of the things that got me through school, even because I was poor academically, was because I had to. I had to get a certain level of marks, and I got the minimum really that I needed to tick the box, which was a B+ average was what you kind of needed to be in the Air Force. I certainly would have had the capability to be an A student, but I just did not have the ability to apply myself. I just found study really, really hard. So all through that, and I applied to be a fighter pilot whilst I was at school. I got knocked back the first time for my academics. I went back to school, improved my academics, got accepted the next time. So by the time I was 19, I was in the service and starting my officer training before becoming a pilot. That was pretty cool. And I think you talk about luck. I think at that time, I was very lucky. The selection officer on the final interviews, or he kind of oversee the recruitment of all pilots around the country. He did a little bit of experiment where he was looking at recruiting much younger pilots. There was me and 5 other pilots that were all 19. All of us successfully made it to be fighter pilots out of a group of 35. North was his name. Very forward-looking in his approach. He's one of those guys that recruited determination and recruited purpose. He didn't care about everything else. He's sort of like, we can mold these people into who they need to be. And again, it was a huge lesson for me, which was bringing purposeful people on with motivation is what you want. All your experience to date is you being very good at what was important yesterday. I think there that when you look at putting an entrepreneurial mindset in something that I've taken forward after being a fighter pilot and 15 years as a business owner and entrepreneur is always recruit and always look for that energy and alignment with purpose. Yeah, so that pretty much is the long story, mate, too.
Wow. Well, that's an amazing story. We're gonna dig deep into that one. But isn't it amazing? That everybody's got that one teacher that makes such an impact in their lives. And any teacher that's listening, don't underestimate what you do on a daily basis, because that one life that you touch, where without her teaching you the skill sets, maybe you wouldn't have made it into the Air Force, right? Because ultimately you weren't that great of a student, but you loved learning, and she taught you the skill sets that are so important, to work through as a pilot, right?
Yeah, and the headmaster I had at my high school was also very different in that he was very much about everything that happens in your life and how you behave. You're ultimately accountable. It's not the school's job to hold you accountable. Some kids and some students obviously took advantage of that, and he was viewed as a bit of a maverick headmaster, and his tenure was relatively short, I think. But when you look at the students that he churned out during his tenure, now in their 40s, they are wall-to-wall entrepreneurs, doctors. They're all thriving in their famous musicians. They were academically one of the poorest years to go through the school, but in life, some of probably the most successful year groups to go through that particular school.
Wow. I was arguing with William because he said anyone can make it as a Navy SEAL as long as they want it bad enough. Is it true for a fighter pilot? Can anyone make it to become a fighter pilot as long as they want it bad enough?
Yeah, totally. 100%. And one of the things that I always get, disappointed by is when I meet young kids or I talk at universities telling my story, which is of a very average Joe, getting into the cockpit. They're like, wow, well, I never even thought of being a fighter pilot because I just didn't think I'd be good enough. Like there's this unfortunate mystique about it that you've got to be this elite, hyper athlete, Tom Brady of flying, and you don't. No fighter pilots are. There's no super talented ducks of school, high-performing athletes. Fighter pilots are kind of just average at everything. There's no major weakness, no major strength. And then they mold that into a fighter pilot. And it's very rare to find a fighter pilot that didn't want to be a fighter pilot their whole life. And it's very true. And that's the same in life. Anyone can be anything. Like it's all your choice. You can choose not to be an entrepreneur, or you can choose to be one. But just be aware, whatever journey you take is going to be hard work. And I think one of the areas where military guys don't transfer into the civilian world very well, and it's well documented, that transitioning veterans struggle, right, is because you just never get the intensity. The intensity of the military is just doesn't exist anywhere else. And you don't have the trust and the bonds. And I've been working in high performance coaching now for 6 years, and I've sort of abandoned it and moved into a new genre of performance, which I call deep performance. And it resonates with where you're coming from is when you look at people who are genuinely successful, and I don't mean, people that become the CEO of a business, even though for them that's successful, or someone that has a Grant Cardone or a Ferraris and private jets, like people that live to their personal fulfillment, that's success. And when you look at that, and again, Serena Williams, Oprah Winfrey, Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal, when you look at these best of the best, they're actually very good at is just doing the basics. They show up all the time, and they're exceptional at squeezing the most out of, I call it the TP, time, trust, and purpose. They've got amazing purpose. They love the game. They know it's hard, but they love it. They love the industry that they're in. They love what they do every day. And that's critical if you want to be personally fulfilled. They're trusted. Everything they do and they say, they do. So people trust who they are, and they invest in that trust, right? They feel safe. And they squeeze the most out of every hour of every day. Like they create time. We can't create time in terms of add more seconds and hours in a day, but the way we create it is to optimize each one of those. Because if you sit very quietly and watch the clock for an hour, man, that is a long time. It's just we cram that hour full of garbage, which means we feel like we have no time, but it's there. So for me, deep performers, the best of the best, they're able to optimize those three elements, create more time, build trust, and deliver on purpose.
I love what you said in terms of going back to the basics, doing it extremely well and doing it consistently to build up that muscle. And then you can work on the nuances. Because I think really kind of that's what, if you think about Michael Jordan, right? When he was cut from his basketball team, the coach told him, if you come in every morning at 6 a.m. and you practice with me every single day and you work on the basics, you're going to succeed. And that's Michael Jordan. He wasn't extraordinary. He was just disciplined. And I think that's what you're saying, if I'm correctly assessing what you're saying.
Discipline is habits. Discipline is having a simple plan, not trying to do too much. A big part of discipline is saying no. It's saying yes to practice and no to going to Burger King. Every moment is a decision, and no human being is capable of making all the best decisions every day. That's impossible, right? We can't do that. We need to. We all have urges. We all need to fulfill other elements of our life. That's fine. So what we really want to try and do is if there's a bucket of desires and needs, if we can put 70% of those into our business rather than 10% when we work for someone or we're unfulfilled, then that means a lot of those needs are being met at the same time as being commercially sound and creating a sustainable existence for ourselves and doing something purposeful and fulfilling.
Speaking of purposeful, fulfilling, and disciplined, can you summarize what training is like to be a fighter pilot? Just because I'm sure so many are interested and curious. What do you have to go through and how difficult it is?
Super hard. For me, I was very lucky to have the gift of purpose after that air show, right? So I never had to worry about what I'm going to do, or I just knew what I had to do and I just had to follow all the steps. The steps aren't clear. So what I learned is, well, if you don't know, go somewhere. When I was 12, I was always out visiting the squadrons, talking to pilots, constantly asking people, what questions do they need? What's important? So by the time I was interviewed and went through the process, I kind of knew just about everything about the Air Force and how it worked. In Australia, you're allowed to make an application and get all your service records, which is every piece of paperwork, assessment, every written word, every document. It's like thousands of documents. And overwhelmingly, I still didn't rank that well in academics, right, in my selection. But overwhelming, it was like, a mature, determined and motivated young man. And the maturity was because I could have grown-up conversations about the industry that I wanted to go in. So now when you train as a fighter pilot, it's like being at university, but you're doing your 3 or 4 year degree in 9 months. Someone's following you around all the time, watching how you drink in the bar, watching how you eat, watching over your shoulder while you do your exams. It's sort of 400 individually assessed one-on-one missions where it's a 3-strike policy. So you fail 2, on the third one, you're out. For a lot of people, it's a 2-strike policy. You're gone after the second one. Every day, they push you to your limit. They see where that is. You make a mistake, they come back. They deliberately push you into the era to make you fail the mission, but to see you make the decision, which is, this is now unsafe, I'm going to say no. And for me, learning that skill like this, you're in a moment here where you can't complete the mission and that your success or failure is based on that, but you're about to you're into an unsafe environment. You've got to make the safe decision. So in that environment, there are no good decisions. It's only, you're not going to get the top mark because you're not going to do the mission. You're going to get an okay mark because you made the safe decision. A lot of people don't make that decision. They push the high risk and they fail. And again, that for me is a great lesson in life and risk management. It's like, you're not always going to have a good and a bad decision. Sometimes you're going to have great decisions and two good decisions to make. You're going to have too much opportunity, and other times you're going to have 2 bad decisions. So you just learn that's the journey, and once that decision's made, it's gone. Move forward. So fighter pilot thinking, and it's what I do a lot. I do a lot of coaching, but I don't coach individuals. I only coach teams. And a lot of that is about purposefully saying no and purposefully moving forward. It's not about blindly moving forward and just being a train wreck. And it's not about analysing the past. It's this very fine balance between where we're going, where we've been, and making decisions today to fulfill that vision off in the distance, fulfill that purposeful outcome.
So when you get into training, how long before they let you fly a plane? Can you come in with never flying?
You can come in if you never fly, but I mean, I started flying when I was 14 because I just loved it.
Oh, wow.
So it's not, the Air Force doesn't say, hey, you're a pilot, this is going to be easy. That you say, hey, I want to be a pilot, and you've already been doing it for 3 years. They kind of say, well, and I self-funded it. I worked 2 jobs. I worked after school. I studied after school. I didn't do academically well at school, but I was, an 18-hour-day kind of guy doing stuff, reading. I didn't want to read history books about Vietnam. I read stories about Vietnam.
Yeah.
So I learned about it, but it wasn't the way that school wanted me to learn about it. But if I had a conversation with a history teacher, I would be more across the detail and nuance of the war than reading it out of a history book. So I was a very social learner. I learned from mimicking and observing and great mentors and storytelling, right? So you join up, you do 3 in Australia. Like in the US, right, you got to go to college or an academy. It's like a 3-4 year journey before you even get in the cockpit. In Australia, it's 3 months of officer training, 1 month of survival training, 3 months of ground school, and boom, you're flying. So it's 6 months, and then, you're straight into the cockpit. And you are training for probably 2.5 years. Then you're in the squadron, then you've got another year of training. So by about 3.5 year point, you're safe, dangerous to actually lead a formation. And it's intense. It's like 6 hours a day. You live in the barracks. You're all in. You're fully immersed in that environment. Work hard, play hard. But it's also your dream. Like every day, you're rolling the dice on your life dream. Everything you've ever wanted. That's the pressure of failure. Is like, so I think what you learn and what's really cool in that environment is, you manage pressure really well. You manage disrupted environments. You learn the difference between investing in the things you can control, so you can control the airplane, and you have to work around the things you can't, but it's no excuse. You can't just fly into a thunderstorm and into hail and destroy the aircraft, right? It's in the way. It's not ideal. It's not meant to be there. But you've got to adapt. You've got to be the water in the river, not the rock. Just move around it, but do it purposefully, and know that when I go here, I'm going to end up there. So you're always in the moment, looking forward the whole time. And that's, I think, for entrepreneurs, a really important skill. I think a lot of entrepreneurs are way too far off in the future and way too much on the big idea, and not focused on the 300-400 things you've got to do as an entrepreneur to get your systems in place, to understand, to build trust with people, to transact with you. All of that is you at the start. And if you don't have all those systems and relationships and trust, you'll never scale. You're going from trusting Boo to trusting a brand, and that's a journey right there.
How's it like? What's the feeling like to fly a fighter jet for the first time?
Yeah, that's like, for me, one of my greatest memories is the first time I flew a single-seat aircraft obviously by myself, because I'm the only one in it. But flying a 20-ton fighter jet with just you in it, that's the dream. That's everything you ever wanted to do. That's the Spitfire, the Hurricane, the P-51, the P-38, the you and the machine, the man-machine interface in an aircraft that can accelerate while pointing straight up at the sky. And the day I flew, the weather was quite bad, and there was a lot of thunderstorms, and they pushed and got me airborne. And I knew how to fly in cloud in different airplanes, and I was allowed to fly in cloud, but not in this one, right?
Yeah.
So I was flying in this environment of massive thunderstorms and lightning, and I managed to fly around. Thunderstorms are big vertical cloud basically, and you're flying this jet aircraft and doing barrel rolls and hugging the cloud that is around these not the thunderstorms, not allowed to fly near them, but the other clouds that are like thunderstorms. Yeah, and it was beautiful. It was a beautiful day up there around the cells, and then found a hole in the cloud, and it was cloudy and dark, and you have to slow the aircraft as slow as you can, then slam the afterburners to learn what it's like to get that acceleration. And for anyone I talk to, it's like the real feeling of that is like watching the pod racing in Star Wars. It's just like you get pushed back in the seat, the jet accelerates away, you're raining thunder and noise down on the villages below you. And then you come back and land the aircraft, and it's all over, and you're like, I just took off an F-18 Hornet, flew it around all by myself and got it back on the ground, and no one got hurt. And I did it. I just achieved my life dream right there.
Wow.
But, that's a small moment. Most of the time, it's bloody hard. It's a lot of work and a lot of stress.
Yeah, it's like entrepreneurship. 15%, 10-15% is fun, and the rest is grind. Do you get turbulence with a fighter jet like you would with a commercial airline, or how does that work?
Well, you do. It's just different. You can't go through turbulence in a jet super fast because it's very, very uncomfortable. But yeah, it's the same. It's the same but different. It's not like that kind of flappy bobby stuff you get in an airliner. It's like bam, it slams you. You smash your head into the cockpit window, the cockpit canopy. Turbulence in a fighter jet's intense.
Crazy. So you started with 38, only 5 completed. Those are pretty low odds. How did you deal with that stress? How did you push through? And is there also like a hell week like the SEALs have for you guys?
No, we don't do any of that. There's a different, SEALs, our special air service here, theirs is a very physical type of assessment, because they're out, in the boondocks, carrying their bags around. They are putting the body under immense physical pressure, and they're, to put it blunt, they're up close with the killing, right? Our environment's very sterile. Our environment is layering in physical intensity when you pull high G and mental intensity. there's a lot going on when you add a third dimension into your problem solving. We don't have that intense period, which is like a 6-month, 3 to 6 month program. Ours is a 3-year. Ours is just sustained intensity and pressure. There's a nuance there in what the product is you're developing. But we've had fighter pilots we've had 3 or 4 fighter pilots in Australia move across into the Special Forces. There's a lot of commonality there. We just like 5-star hotels, not living in our own feces.
Yeah.
That's the choice we make.
That's funny. How did you deal with the stress of knowing that only so few actually make it till the end?
I wasn't bothered because I just knew I'd be one. I just knew that was my purpose.
You knew it. No question about it.
I knew it. No question.
Yeah, I think that's the reason. Quick question for you, because this is really interesting. And I've always heard this, and I'm not sure if this is a myth or not, but I heard that fighter pilots are required to have absolutely perfect or even better than perfect vision. Is that true?
Well, I've got a good story about that, actually. When I was medically discharged at the age of 30 with a medical condition called ankylosing spondylitis. But that condition actually starts when you're in your late teens, and one of the things it does, it can cause a small issue with your eyes, which means that you're a little bit short-sighted. But I didn't know this at the time, right? So I went through my selection process, and when I had my eye test, I'm fairly certain that the 70-year-old ophthalmologist that was doing my eye test, it was in the afternoon, was drunk because he reeked of whiskey, and it was like late on a Friday afternoon. So we went through all the eye tests and everything, and he said to me, look, Christian, you're mildly short-sighted. How badly do you want to be a fighter pilot? And I'm like, look, and I got a bit teary, and I'm like, this is the only thing I ever wanted to be. All I ever wanted was to be a fighter pilot. I didn't think I was going to have any issue with my eyes, right? I didn't have glasses at the time. And he said, look, you're very mildly, short-sighted, but what I'll do, I'll sign you up as being perfectly sighted. But when you join, after you're in, make sure you get an eye test to get a pair of glasses. So right there is where purpose beats humanity and the rules, right? Right there is the confluence of luck and opportunity. Whereas if I said I didn't have strength in my conviction and I just believed the system, I would have gone, oh, right, okay, well, that's it for me then. That's the end of my journey. So there for me was, and I'm blind, I can barely see now. My glasses are like super strong. But did it affect me as a fighter pilot? No, I had my vision corrected beyond perfect. I had like Superman vision. So again, it's one of those things in life where you go, well, I didn't make the rules. Someone made the rules. It's just a broad brush thing to cull the numbers. If they just said to everyone, hey, have glasses, then you can have superhuman vision, you're probably better off. But it is what it is. So the answer is yes, you do. I think today you're allowed to have LASIK vision correction before you come in. It's a bit more fluid. But yeah, at the time, 100% vision.
It's amazing how luck comes into play. With one stroke of a pen, we could have not been speaking today. It's amazing. Your life could have been completely different.
100%. Yeah. I don't know how my life would have turned out.
Wow. So you had to memorize 427 checklist items and you couldn't miss a single one. How did you do it? And what would you say to us mere mortals listening about our capacity to achieve, these types of monumental tasks and not only monumental tasks, but under stressful conditions? Because that takes it up a whole other level, right?
Yeah. I was listening to a good podcast yesterday on habits and why successful people are successful. And one of the key drivers to building a new habit and being successful is necessity. That we're more motivated by necessity than we are by desire. It was necessary for me to learn those checklists to be a fighter pilot, right? Given a choice today, would I bother learning that? No, I wouldn't. How you learn 427 individual checklist items from 1 to 427, the first thing is you're given, all pilots, whatever aircraft you train on, you're given a cardboard cockpit. And it's just a cutout of the whole cockpit, what's up the front, the side panels, the roof, it's all there. And you have your checklist. Most aircraft that aren't single pilot, a checklist is a challenge response, and it's something I teach all organizations is before you do something, get someone to check and respond before you do it, right? So because there's no one checking what you're doing, and because time is of the essence, and again, another saying is to become a fighter pilot is anyone can become a fighter pilot, but we need fighter pilots that we can train within this very tight window of time. So we would work together as a team. So there'd be like 8 of us would be going through training together, or 6 to 8, and we'd help each other. It'd be one person would hold the checklist, one person would be in the cardboard, and every night you'd go home and you'd practice the cardboard, you'd practice your flow, you'd come in and You'd work with a mate and you'd do it together and you'd help each other. And over 6 weeks, you would literally know every switch, button, outcome in the entire cockpit from 1 to 420. It's a thick checklist too.
Wow.
But what it is, it's patterns and rhythm. It's patterns and rhythm. And we call them now the left to right. So they're not random, right? You start in the bottom left and you train. And where I talk to organizations about this is it's why you need an organization rhythm. It's why an orchestra can play off by heart for 3 hours, tune after tune after tune, with the conductor just keeping them in the game. It's the same way I can do 1 to 427 checklists, the same way I can count from 1 to 427, because it's a pattern. There's a rhythm to it. There's a reason for it. I need to know math. It's necessary. The problem in business and in life is nothing's necessary. It's all choice and you can do what you want to do. And there's no joy in that. There's no joy in doing whatever you want to do. That gets boring real quick. The journey's in learning the 1 to 427. Yeah, that's a massive sense of achievement. Like the day that you can do that is amazing. Then it just transfers into muscle memory and a habit, right? Then it just becomes something you never think about ever again. You just do it. And that part of your brain, if you think about getting as much as your life into muscle memory that you don't have to think about stuff, it gives you all of this creative freedom. Like if you're trying to figure out, how to tie your shoes up every day, you lose those minutes. Learning, you use up more brain power than muscle memory. So for the best of the best, the Michael Jordans, the 10,000 hours of practice is to fill your brain up with muscle memory. And it's, again, as a successful entrepreneur, if you're on $1 billion business, it's showing up consistency and sticking at it. So more of your business is in your muscle memory so you can be more creative. I think that the mistake entrepreneurs make is they start to get too creative too soon and start to look at all the new things and the thing that got you into your business. Once you're in, looking at all the different niches and deciding on one, once you're in, that's your niche. It's too late. There's no getting off that freeway now and looking at this other side road because it's got prettier trees and better restaurants. You've got to optimize your freeway and get the best franchises and the most homogenized stuff on there to grow it up into something that has meaningful value.
Absolutely. You're spot on. It's just creating a habit. Once it's a habit, then you just do it, right? It just happens. So what did you learn in your training on how to thrive in disruptive environment? Because I can't imagine as a fighter pilot to have any more of a disruptive environment. I mean, that's like as disruptive as you can get. So what did you learn that you can transfer over to life and the business world from your training?
The key concept I try and help people with is this thing called situational awareness, right? And situational awareness is knowing how you fit into the world around you at any point in time. And we very rarely have situational awareness because we're always looking off in the future or looking in the past. We're not good at being in the moment. And I think whilst it's good to be in the moment, you've got to do that purposefully. And I think a lot of people confuse being in the moment as doing yoga and just being. And it's important to be and have that time and develop your amygdala and tune your brain down. I mean, the brain is a highly tuned Ferrari, 65,000 thoughts every day. That's not good. You've got to tune that down.
Yep.
To me, being in the moment and having situational awareness is saying, where do I need to be? What's happening right now? What do I need to adjust? And that's what you learn as a fighter pilot. We've got the mission. We've got the 3 mission objectives. As soon as we get airborne, we're going to have stuff thrown up against us. We've got a rough idea of what that is, but it's going to be different. So we just keep going based on the plan. And the minute something's off plan, we're like, right, let's flick into... We've trained that when that particular threat, when that aircraft comes out of nowhere, we kind of know what's going to happen. We know there's a rough set of rules to deal with that. So we have clarity around where we want to be. We've got a rough idea, and we call these things the what ifs. When I work in businesses, everyone spends time in the what ifs. So we build a perfect plan. We what if a few key, like really bad scenarios. And then when everything else happens, we can kind of deal with it, right? So situational awareness is based on what we know, making decisions. The decisions then create environments where we can now look for more information because we're not umming and ahhing. And all of these decisions equal actions and impacts. And every time we have an action and impact, we can just make another decision. Without the action, without the impact, we find confusion.
Yeah.
So situational awareness is second by second, where we're constantly reassessing our environment. And worst case, when our situational awareness is really low, we turn around and get out of there and give ourselves time to think. And situational awareness is this bubble, and it's distance between your environment and your decision making. And we try and maintain this distance in our decision making all the time. And we know when that distance is reducing, when the world's starting to crush in on us, when we've got to make lots and lots of disjointed decisions, it's time to get away from the fight. we call it pump out. Just pump out. Give yourself time, rebuild the picture, focus on the big things. What the hell are we trying to achieve here? And then come back in once we've created the big picture. In business, in entrepreneurs, it's that constant battle between getting in and building part of your system, building a website, building a structure, and then coming back out and going, what are we doing this for? What's the point of this again? Right, come back in. As fighter pilots, that's why we have a wingman, because one of us is in the weeds doing the job, the other one's keeping an eye on things, and then we swap over. So someone's always got the big picture, someone's always working out the detail, working the radar, looking at the threats.
I love that.
So this mindset about working in the business, on the business, in the business, you've got to do that purposefully. And the minute you're in the business so deep, and I find this for me, it's a red flag. So I work in terms of sprints, and I say to myself, Tuesday morning, I'm super intense on the website. I know it's going to be a 2-week. I know there's a lot I need to do, but I am going to absolutely, for 2 hours, smash my website and developer until I get to the point where I can't think of anything more. And then I'm going to give it to her, and I'm going to leave it. And I'm going to come back to it next Tuesday, and then next Tuesday. And every Tuesday goes from 2 hours to 1 hour to 30 minutes to 20 minutes to 15 minutes. So I chunk everything up, and you're either intensely doing something, and then once I've done that, I go and I'm on the PlayStation, or I'm out in the sun. I'm done. And then when I feel like I've been outside or I've been lazy for too long, I'm like, okay, I'm bored of this now. I'm ready to go and be intense. And then I do another 1 to 2 hours on something else. And I've got 3 things a day that I put intense energy into. And in the in-betweens, I'm doing nothing, or I'm emailing or talking to someone, doing the relationship stuff, having a chat, staying connected. And I think what people do as entrepreneurs, they make the mistake. They think that they're these awesome multitaskers and, hey, look at me, I'm busy, I'm on the phone, I'm out there, I'm making calls, I'm jumping in, I'm spuriously giving people my latest big idea on my website. You're just creating chaos, that's what you're doing. You can do that for about a year, and then it all comes back to bite you on the ass, because you've burned through your capital, the deals you hoped to land didn't land, your lack of coherence in your business translates into a lack of coherence and how you explain it to other people. It doesn't work, right? So for me, it's all about do, stop, think. Do, stop, think.
Mark Cuban calls these entrepreneurs wantrepreneurs, because it's all they do is they don't actually make anything happen. But I love what you said about situational awareness. I think you're going to get a lot of listeners going back to listen to that segment, because it's fantastic. But the lead to that is, I'd like to speak about something that almost never happens in the business world, but it's so important for fighter pilots, and that's debriefing, right? The Blue Angels consider this practice as important, if not more important, as the flights that they go on. They get so specific that they debrief the march to the planes. So what is debrief for the Seven Hatters, and how do you apply it to your business and to your life?
If you're an entrepreneur and the only thing you learnt to do was debrief, you're going to be successful. It's impossible to not be successful with debriefing, yet no one does it. So conceptually, it's the simplest thing on the planet. You just say, what's my result relative to where I want to be right now? What's the reason I'm getting these suboptimal results? What am I going to do about it right now? The way that we talk about it is, hey, I made a mistake, I fess up, I fix it. One of the keys to when Top Gun was created, the school, what it was actually created to do was instill the skill of debriefing. The byproduct of that was all the pilots got better. It wasn't necessarily about how to fly a jet better. And the origins of that were in Vietnam. There was one squadron that was outperforming 12, 13 to 1. All the other squadrons, same jets, same pilots, same training. But that particular unit was debriefing. So they took that and applied it everywhere. Now every Western Air Force in the world debriefs. The concept's easy. You're only asking those 3 questions: result, reason, response. Where it's hard is it's all about you and you being suboptimal as a human being. Fighter pilots know we're suboptimal as a human being because it's exposed every time you put a $80 million machine on your back. Like, it's impossible to keep up. You're not designed for that environment. So walking through the door, first mission of the day, first thing you're ever taught as a fighter pilot is, hey, you're the weakest link in the chain here. The human factor is what we're trying to manage when it comes to operating these aircraft. And that's like in business, entrepreneur, you talk about AI, machine learning, all of this stuff is just going to highlight more and more. It's the human, it's the decisions we make, the plans we put in place, the ideas that we have that ultimately are the inefficiency here. Debriefing is how you tighten all that up. Fail early, fail fast. That's debriefing. Experimentation, debriefing. Having an attempt at something, debriefing. every time you do something new, the debrief is where you learn about it, right? And I talk about purposeful innovation. You know, if you're in an industry, let's take Kodak, for example, purposeful innovation there would be, hey, we're in the business of capturing images. Digital's come along now, so let's try and come up with a plan where we can capture images using digital. They made a different decision though, which is, hey, we're Kodak, we're in the business of film. So we don't like digital because we want to make sure that we just create and build better films. So right there was a poor decision that was committed to for a long period of time. If you debrief that, you would go, okay, well, the objective to create better film was to sell more film. The result is film sales are going down. So we've got to debrief that. Why? In there, that you would have had a discovery point, which is like, okay, clearly digital is the way ahead. And actually, it's the cameras, Kodak cameras that people want, not the film. And you would have made a decision right there. So as an entrepreneur, the fact that you're in a market which is innovative, so purposeful innovation is connecting to what you do rather than just come up with some random idea and one of the biggest errors and mistakes I see in high performance sport and the teams that are the best, they always connect their past to their future. They try a play based on what they've learned, not, hey, I've got a left field idea, let's try it. And in the military especially, left field ideas that have no basis in what you're already doing always fail. And Clayton Christensen, who's a pretty famous professor at Harvard Business School, he completed a fairly seminal case study on product launches. And he studied 30,000 product launches and only 1,500 were successful, only 5%. There's another statistic out there, $2 trillion a year is wasted in software development through poor launches, products that weren't fit for purpose or launched too buggy. In software development and in the dev space, they've got Agile, right? So the Agile Manifesto that happened to be co-created by fighter pilot John Sutherland. That's the closest way of working in management tool that mimics how fighter pilots think and act, and they call it the retrospective. The problem is that's not translating outside of the dev world. So what we talk about in my partnership with Afterburner, that's been doing this for 25 years around the world, and in some of the personal coaching that I do, that's the most important thing you do every day. Debriefing every day is more important than the stuff that you do, because the stuff that you do is only as relevant as what you've just learned from a debrief. And the saying we have in the Air Force is the debrief is more important than the mission itself. That's how critical debriefing is. That's how you create situational awareness. You can debrief second to second. You can debrief week to week. It's just the size of the problem that you're solving.
Yeah, it's amazing because Kodak, ironically, developed the first digital camera.
Yeah.
And they just totally lost sight. Same thing with Blockbuster, which was a movie rental studio or company in the US back in the 80s and 90s. And it's funny when you say about the software and the dev world. I mean, I own a software company and I know how easy it is to get lost and just create stuff without really thinking about it. So this nameless and rankless attitude is crucial in debriefing, right? Tell us a little bit about what nameless and rankless means.
So the world is political, right? There's relationships, there's complexity. You know, the fact that we can barely get our own thoughts together and understand what we want, let alone groups of people, which is why we have mob mentality. It's just easy to just, well, whatever they said, I just agree with it. That's less work. So what nameless and rankless means is, okay, we know that. We know the fighter pilots are in a hierarchical organisation. It's the military. We have orders. We have to do things. But that doesn't work flying fighter jets. Being ordered to do something when the world around you changes so quickly just means we die. So we learn that lesson the hard way. A debrief is like a space in time. Maybe it's 5 minutes, half an hour, 2 hours, whatever, half a day. But in that environment, when we walk in the door, everyone acknowledges that we are here with an objective focus on our outcomes. And that's another key part of debriefing and why businesses struggle with it, is because they don't have clarity in their plan. They don't chunk down measurable goals to each level. They have big strategic goals, but you got to make that equal your number. So let's say, in a fighter mission, we might have to destroy 4 aircraft, and there's 4 of us. So the overarching mission is to destroy 4 aircraft. My number for that is to get to Mach 1.2, pull the trigger at 25 miles, and be at an altitude of 36,000 feet. They're my key 3 numbers. That granularity doesn't happen in business. You just like kill 4 aircraft, and you're sitting there, you don't know how to do that. So you get in trouble, and then you're like, well, you make excuses, right? And then no one really ever blames you for an external excuse. And therefore, what happens is we vilify our contractors, our vendors, it's our customers' fault, or It's never, most of the time it's not, it's your fault. And in the customer, it's the person who's inside the customer's fault, you know? No one goes into any of these deals trying to create a heartache. It's all our interpretation or lack of expectation management. So debriefing manages that too. And one of the key, there's 7 key outcomes from debriefing that cause 80 to 85% of problems in business. The number one, planning. Lack of expectation management. And for an entrepreneur, that's a big one, right? Because you are always overselling to get investors in, you're always making a commitment into a world that doesn't exist yet for you. So one of the skills I've learned there is to break that conversation down into 3 levels, and I call it the want, plan, do. What do you want as an entrepreneur? What do you plan to do in the short term? And what do you actually do? And if you can express that story well, that's how you create stickiness. And I've had 4 successful businesses since being a fighter pilot, and that's what I've learned is you're able to sell a bit of sizzle, a little bit of blue sky. You're able to plan a win in the next 90 days and you deliver on that win. And that's how you accelerate the journey to being a meaningful business.
I can tell you, I'm going to take a lot of this into my own business, but just for the 7 hatters, to reiterate, the 3 questions for debriefing is, what is the result relative to where I need to be? That's question number 1. Number 2, what's the reason I'm not getting to my destination? That's question number 2. And what am I going to do today to get closer to my goal? Is that correct?
Yeah. What's the action, not the intention?
Got it. What's the action? That's good. I like that.
Not, oh, we've got to do this, we've got to do that, we've got to improve this. No, I'm going to do this tomorrow. And if you're a team, if you're an entrepreneur that has a team, every person in the debrief has to be able to make that statement. And guess what? When you debrief the next day, what you're debriefing is the result of those actions.
Yeah.
If you're in a full, what I call GID mindset, get it done mindset, if you're full GID in your organization, you don't have meetings anymore. No such thing as a meeting. Your culture is debriefs and planning sessions, looking back, looking forward. You never provide an update. You're either doing your work and the job's done, or you're problem solving to figure out how to go. You're never updating and saying, I did this, because it's assumed that you will always do what you said you would do. And if you haven't, you've come up with a potential solution that we're going to problem solve through together. You're not a wheelbarrow, right? You're not just sitting there waiting for me, the leader, to push you along. We're going to build gardeners here. Everyone can proactively make decisions in the garden.
I absolutely love that. You know, you say fighter pilots operate in black or white. There are no gray areas. So how does that relate to entrepreneurs? Because some might argue that there are some benefits to operating in the gray.
There's no benefits from operating in the gray. There's nothing but bad that comes out of the grey. It's always there, like it's there unintentionally. Like that's the world, right? You wake up, it's COVID, right? Well, that's a big grey area. There's nothing you can do about it. You wake up with a cold, that's a grey area. Someone has an accident, twists their ankle. So there's always stuff happening that makes it grey. But what fighter pilots do is we immediately go through a decision-making discipline to make a decision on that, right? And we know it might not be the right one, but it's okay, because as we move forward, we'll realise that, okay, we can change that decision. What people don't like is changing big decisions. You look like a bit of a Fruit Loop. But when you change your micro decisions, your little ones, no one really notices. Changing your mind and decisions at a micro level, that's called being adaptable. Changing decisions at a strategic level is flaky. So these small decisions that we make should still lead us to the big decision and the big purposeful outcome. So there's a nuance there, right? Grey is bouncing from one black and white to the next. It's not just staying in there and going, oh, something bad happened, I'm just going to ignore that. Or particularly as an entrepreneur, I've got this great idea. There's a fear to put it out to the customer because the customer's going to say no. So you can flip that on its head a little bit and go, hey, say, okay, I have done this product. Do you like it? No, I don't. It's like, hey, I'm experimenting with something new. I listened to what you said and you said this. I debriefed the client. I learned what the client's intention was, what the client's results were, what the client's reasons were for the result. And I'm the response. I'm the action now. So I'm going to come in armed with that conversation and say, I think this is going to work. Would you want to? Let's give it a go. Rather than say, here's a widget, give it a go. So that's situational awareness, is that context. And I talk about in sales and marketing teams, debriefing with clients.
Yeah.
Debrief with them. And that is how you both not only create situational awareness for yourself, you create situational awareness for them. They walk away going, that was a really enlightening conversation. I feel a bit clearer about where I'm going and what I need to get there. you don't become valuable anymore. You become invaluable.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of business you want to do.
I absolutely love that. I mean, so many lessons learned from your time as a pilot that I'm going to have to listen to this a few times. But when you left the Air Force, right, you did not leave because you wanted to. You had a physical ailment, right, that prevented you from continuing, right? That it wasn't a voluntary leave, correct?
No, I was medically discharged.
Yeah.
So I had this this problem with it's like an arthritic condition. Ankylosing spondylitis is where your immune system gets a little bit broken and confused. It doesn't know the difference between healthy tissue and unhealthy tissue, and it attacks the soft tissue in your spine, your hips, all over. It's just really painful, uncomfortable, and flying a jet at high speed and high G, it just got too painful. And I was in England on exchange flying a different jet. And in one mission, my neck just seized up looking out the window sideways. I couldn't turn it around. So I sort of had to turn my body and fly the jet home sideways. And that was the last jet flight I ever did.
Wow.
So I had to, I had to kind of figure out what to do next. And one of the challenges with being a fighter pilot is it's not a transferable skill directly. Yeah. You can't be a civilian fighter pilot, right? Funnily enough, you can now. But back then you couldn't be. So, I had to think about what I could do. I knew I wanted to if I was going to do something, I needed to be like the fighter pilot side of business. I had to be entrepreneurial, creating my own destiny. I couldn't stand the thought of working for someone or being an airline pilot. Nothing wrong with those jobs. It just wasn't for me. So I thought, well, I bought a book like How to Start Your First Business for Dummies or something. Again, not academic, and I don't like those sort of books. I think I got to about page 3 or 4, and there was a sentence in there or a breakout box that said, if you want to start your own business, make sure you go somewhere where demand will never be met by the supply, because that way, if you do a bad job, people are going to buy from you anyway. So for ex-military guys, it was Afghanistan or Iraq, right? Post-war, putting the places back together. Again, I wasn't special services. I didn't do Hell Week, so Iraq was a little bit too next level for me. So I went to Afghanistan with my best mate. Like, this was a team effort, wingman.
Nice.
Tom and I were 50-50 partners. He was South African Navy diver, parachute regiment officer in the British Army. And together we started this company called CTG Group, Christian Thomas Group, just two of us, right?
Nice.
And that business was, what did you guys do? Well, we knocked on doors and asked people what they needed, and we did what they needed us to do. And that's how we grew our business. And it was humanitarian projects. We got bought out by a multinational. It grew into revenues at 200 million. We set up Afghanistan's first mortuary service. We got into hospitals. We helped manage the building of schools and clinics. Yeah, so it was a pretty cool job. And it was real raw business. Everything was a handshake. You had to do what you had to do to get the job done.
Wow, that must have been an incredible success for you. So going back to when you ended your career as a pilot, did you, because if this was probably a low for you, did you self-sabotage? Did you exhibit self-destructive behaviors like some would?
No, I was too high energy, too focused.
Nice.
No, I guess I had the benefit that I saw it coming because of the pain. When it comes to making that transition in life, I was 30, 11 years in the military. It was necessity. There wasn't a choice, right? I just had to do it. And again, failure wasn't an option, so just don't fail.
Wow, crazy.
There's business going on, right? Like, people are doing it. There's billions of dollars. So it's happening. I just got to do it. And I know if you just do it and you just stick with stuff and you show up, eventually it turns into something sustainable.
Boo, I'd love to have you back because there's just so much that you have to share. What I'd like to do is I'd like to end and close on my interviews with the following question. Who did you have to stop being, and who did you need to become to manifest your current success today?
My first real major life crisis was 32 when I got divorced. A bunch of stuff was going on, and my wife and I decided that was enough. I've been away a lot, traveling all over the world, pretty high risk kind of guy.
Yeah.
And for me, that was the first real major fail in life for me, right? The out of my control, couldn't understand it, couldn't comprehend it, couldn't get my head around it. And I invested in a year of personal development. I had a psychologist. I was introduced to a spiritual healer, which for me at that point in time, you would have thought, what on earth is a spiritual healer? What's that garbage?
Yeah.
But those two people had a profound effect on my life. They taught me really two things. One, everything is ego. So all my success was invested in me. and who I was, and I defined myself by the success. So learn to just let go of that. And the second one was cognitive behavioral therapy, the ability to have emotions, but to logically come to a conclusion as to what's healthy and what's not. And also, at the end of the day, there's things you can't control, you'll never understand. Put them in a locker and just keep moving forward. And you do that anyway. Like, you're really good with compartmentalization as a fighter pilot, but unhealthy compartment. It's putting something in a box, but not dealing with the emotional side of it. Not letting yourself grieve and get to the end of that process and putting it in a box. It's putting it in a box without the grieving, and that comes to bite you back later with issues with alcohol and other things. So that for me, and that allowed me to have a far more mature relationship and balanced relationship with success. It's really easy to be successful if you have absolutely nothing else in your life except that. That's never going to be sustainable success. And there's plenty of stories of entrepreneurs becoming billionaires and exploding. And that's not a win.
No, it's
that's deep. So deep performance is deep. That's what deep performance is all about. You still got to have the high performance elements and behaviors, but that's not everything. It's part of that journey. Reflection is the missing part, and time to say no and to stop. They're the missing pieces.
Wow, what an exciting interview. I really loved it. So let the seven hatters know what you're currently up to, how they can reach you. You know, what do you have to provide to them? And I'll also include it in my show notes for everybody to check you out and geek out on you. No
worries, mate. Call me Boo is my environment. I'm also the managing partner for this part of the world for Afterburner. And really, for me, I'm a teams coach and mentor. I work virtually with entrepreneurs and businesses only committed to a deep performance mindset. I'm not interested in I can't give you a gift. I can't make your business work for you by magic. But what I can do is optimize the way you deliver each day and enhance the people around you to unlock 400% potential. And there's a great study, 638,000 high performers that demonstrate there's this 400% latent capability in all of us. My role is to not unlock that just in you, to unlock that in a team. And that creates, I've worked with organizations that have grown 700% in a year, purely by coaching for a full year on how to implement the practice of debriefing, but more importantly, the execution of those lessons. Do you work with startups, like really, really small teams, or what's your sweet spot? My sweet spot is not purely startup. I'm actually launching my own startup on the 17th of January next year. Congrats. Which is an app that does all this thinking for you. So all it does is gives you your 3 things per day. It's called Dash 2. Dash 2 is what you call a wingman. So it's designed to be your wingman, this productivity app. Love it. And it's, so I don't work, startup is personal development. Startup is all about you. You got to get your own shit together. I can do that passively through my blogs and stuff, but I work on the second stage or long-established companies that have stagnated, multi-million-dollar businesses, or a substantial transition, digitalization, anything future-focused is what I work on, which is to say, right, where are we now? Where do we want to be? What are the things we need to do over the next, in these 90-day cycles to get us there within 12 to 24 months? Wow, I love that. Boo, thank you so much for joining us in the 7 Hats. So much knowledge. I appreciate you. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate the conversation. I really enjoyed it. Thanks, Al. Thank you. Take care. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Boo. Let's end today with the segment of the show that I refer to as, what can we hang our hat on? And here's my takeaway. Situational awareness is being aware of what is happening around you in terms of where you are, where you're supposed to be, and whether anyone or anything around you is a threat to your health and safety. As Boo states, it's knowing how you fit into the world around you at any point in time. The problem that we face as entrepreneurs is that we're always looking into the future or back in our past. If we can't slow down and find the now, the present moment, we can't master situational awareness within our business and our lives. Your monkey mind is throwing out 65,000 thoughts per day, and 95% of those thoughts are really the same thought you tell yourself over
and over again. So as Boo reminded us, we have to tune our minds down so we can focus on the 3 critical questions that through Debrief allow you to master situational awareness in your life. Every fighter pilot knows when they debrief, they ask themselves, where do I need to be? What's happening right now? And what do I need to adjust? So let's do as Boo teaches. Debrief as if your life depended on it. Don't skimp on that lesson. It's an aha we can all take to the bank. I want to thank Boo once again for joining us so that we can all benefit from his wisdom. And until next time, if you found this episode helpful, please hit that subscribe button and tell other entrepreneurs out there what value you receive from it so we can attract even more high-quality people into our 7 Hats community. So for now, I will bid you farewell and success on your journey. And until next time, my name is Yuval Selik, and I tip my hat to you.